Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar on AWFS Public Policy, how to get involved and make a difference. My name is Adria Salvatore, and I'm the Education Director at AWFS and also help with public policy. I would like to inform you that this webinar is being recorded, and a link will be made available after the webinar so that you can share with others or watch it on demand. We will also be sharing a PDF of the PowerPoint presentation for your reference as well. I'd also like to let you know that if you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat or question section on your control panel, and we will answer questions at the end of the session. So let's get started. So here's an agenda for our webinar today. We're going to just go over our AWFS's position with public policy, the topics that we're currently addressing through public policy. We're going to hear about what's going on related to those topics from our Congressional Liaison. We will talk about what specifically we do related to public policy, why you should get involved, and how. And then we'll dig into the FLYN, which is kind of our big event, and talk about a really neat outcome that happened as a result of our most recent fly-in, and then we'll go into questions. So first, an introduction of AWFS Public Policy. So it's part of our mission and purpose as an association to focus on public policy efforts that reflect the interests of our members and those of our industry. So our Public Policy Committee focuses on trends and legislation that's happening, and we take action to address any possible threats or opportunities. So we're active at the federal level through LobbyIt, which you'll hear from Jason at LobbyIt in a moment. And we also participate in associations such as NAM, which is the National Association of Manufacturers, and coalitions focused on career tech education. We partner with ACTE, which is the head national association focused on career tech ed, and other groups focused on skilled workforce development. So that leads into the issues that we're currently focused on related to public policy. Our message is focused around career technical education and workforce development. So these are things that help ensure the future of our industry and our skilled workforce, and how can we strengthen that and more efforts to get young people and others into our industry and get them trained for the jobs that we need skilled workers for. So some examples of that have been the Perkins Bill. The Perkins Bill is the primary federal funding measure for career tech ed programs, and that had been needed to be reauthorized for a few years. And this past July, it was finally passed. And so this was a really big win, which ensured continued funding. And in fact, at the same time, they got increased funding for these programs all the way down to the local level. So this was an important, big recent step that happened. And we were able to advocate for that in last February during our fly-in and through some other measures. We've also been following apprenticeships. The Department of Labor recently brought together an apprenticeship task force to explore how to expand apprenticeship opportunities. And so we've been watching that and discussing how we can get involved with that movement and help move things forward. And overall work-based learning. So what types of legislation are focused on work-based learning, and how can we as an association, again, help and mobilize our members and take advantage of the opportunities that are out there. Aside from workforce development, we've also been watching the tariff and trade policy activity that's been going on. So I'm sure you guys saw there's a 90-day reprieve, which happened over the weekend, which is great news. But prior to that, we've seen companies obviously be impacted by these recent tariffs, and so how can we help our members, what's really going on, and what should we be doing to address that. And then we also follow regulatory issues that impact our members and the industry. For example, formaldehyde in wood composite products, CARB, which is the California Air Resource Board, which influences the EPA legislation on air quality, and the recent TSCA Title VI legislation. So we've been kind of tracking all of that, thanks to a member of our committee who's also tied in with the Composite Panel Association, and so we report back on what's going on with those. In addition, we've been tracking things like healthcare, labor policies and reform, and any other issues that affect our membership, which is primarily small business. Recently, there was an association retirement plan legislation that was brought up, and so we were exploring how we could, if this would impact our members or have a benefit, and so things like that as they come up and as they relate to our association. So at this time, having said all that, I would like to turn it over to Jason Ortega, Senior Director at LobbyIt and our Congressional Liaison, and he will give us an update on what's currently going on and what we might be addressing in the near future. Jason, go for it.
All right, thanks, Adria. Hello, everyone. As Adria said, I am your advocate here in DC. My work comprises of, monitoring the different legislative issues that were mentioned on the prior slide, and taking meetings regarding the central focus of AWFS's, proactive advocacy, which is in the workforce development space. So, right now there are a number of things that we're just keeping an eye on. Of course, the election really shifted the power here in DC and shifted kind of what we can anticipate to be the priorities of Congress next year. So we're keeping an eye on figuring out who is going to be taking over the various committees that will have bills that are likely to get to the president's desk, and what are they saying about their priorities. What's quickly emerging as two key issues will be infrastructure, which will likely be the first big legislative package that Congress tries to get movement on in the new session starting on January 3rd. And the other big issue will be higher education. Both of those have workforce development components. Naturally, the infrastructure bill will likely have workforce development, education that will be more geared towards the industries that would be involved in infrastructure construction, but that does not mean that there couldn't be potentially issues that we would care about. And then the higher education bill, as it deals with the higher ed component of the U.S. economy, there are as well workforce development components that will be inserted there. And the reason that I know, some of the priorities going forward are because of some of the meetings that I've been taking. So as we've kind of wrapped up the year, I've been spending my time for AWFS taking meetings with member offices and committee offices to figure out kind of where their priorities are. One of those meetings was on the Senate Health Committee, the Health, Education, Labor, and Pensions Committee, which has a pretty big oversight, and met with their staffer there on the Democratic side. Still have to meet with the Republicans, but on the Democrat side to discuss where they're focusing their energy. And despite the fact that the Senate is held by the Republicans, the Democrats do have a lot of say. So meeting with both sides is always kind of our priority, because when neither party has complete control without needing votes from the other party, it's important that we discuss issues with both sides. So the Democrats don't have as much leverage, but they will have a say. And for them, they're really looking at how do we recraft kind of the higher education space to be more cognizant of the fact that not everyone necessarily needs to go to college, or folks that have gone through college need to be able to go back to school to take additional education. And so that's where work-based learning, apprenticeships, other shorter term coursework comes into play. And my priority is right now to identify which portions, which bills that are out there will have the highest likelihood of passage and have a high positive impact on the industry. And so the Democrats are really thinking about this on the Senate side, and similarly on the House side, they're doing that as well. So I took some meetings recently on the House side where they were discussing a variety of issues that could have a positive impact on the membership, such as giving tax credit for tax breaks for those who do continuing education, work-based learning for their employees, chasing down bills that provide funding in order to build partnerships between the private sector and education, so that organizations that may want to build out some type of apprenticeship or partnership with certificate programs or other educational services have the tools and some of the funding. So potentially that funding may come through AWFS, being able to get a grant and then work on building those relationships between the membership and those within education, et cetera. So those are kind of the things that I'm looking for right now, trying to figure out, project accurately where Congress is going, and then dig deeper within that space to figure out if there are specific bills that would provide funding for either directly to employers or for organizations like AWFS that work closely with employers. So that's kind of a broad overview of kind of what I'm doing here in DC, as well as kind of some of the specifics of what my work has been over the past few months, and will likely continue to be for a couple months as we kind of gear up for the FLYN, which I'll talk about a little bit more in a little bit.
Thank you so much, Jason. That was excellent. Very helpful. Okay, so leading into, having said all that, we'll talk about some of the activities, how we tangibly get involved in public policy. So in the past, we've done letter writing campaigns where if there's, especially if there's a particular legislation such as the Perkins Act, we've mobilized our member companies and asked to sign letters. Generally, this is through software where the letter is prepared, and you can modify it if you'd like, or you can send it as it was prepared with your name and information. So it's a kind of a level one, very easy way to get involved and have your voice heard without having to commit a lot of time and energy, but it still helps in having that bigger voice and making a statement to our represented members. Another thing we do is data collection and surveys, for example, related to the trade and tariff policies. We distributed a survey to our member companies asking if they have been affected, if they would like us to speak up on their behalf to our Congress. And so we did receive some feedback on that. It's not too late. We're still kind of gathering data on that. So if you have been impacted or have any insight or feedback on the tariff and trade issue, please email me at Adria, ADRIA, at AWFS.org, and we'd love to continue that conversation with you. We have a webpage on our website. If you go to awfs.org/public-policy, that's our public policy hub. We post updates and news on public policy that we're following, and then any updates or opportunities that are coming up you can find on that page. We also distribute email blasts. So make sure if you're not receiving emails, you can email me again, Adria at AWFS.org, and ask to be included on email updates. But that generally goes to the primary contact for your membership with AWFS. So check with that person as well. We encourage strongly representative site visits, meaning if you are offering an event or if you'd like to host an event and and you want to invite your local representatives to attend that event. It's a really powerful and important way that your local representatives can understand your company more and our industry more. And just it's the best way to get face time, or one of the best ways certainly, and to interact and become, start to build that relationship with your local representatives. So again, we encourage that, and you'll hear in a little bit a case study of that in action. And additionally, we have our Public Policy Committee, which you'll be hearing from our chair momentarily. This committee meets quarterly via phone. We have roughly 1-hour meetings where Jason, similar to this, where Jason from LobbyIt will give us updates on what's going on, and then we discuss whatever's going on. We're preparing for the FLYN or just whatever sort of activity is happening at the time. We also communicate between meetings through Basecamp as a committee, which is a collaborative software where I share documents and post notes and that sort of thing. And then, of course, participation in our DC FLYN is kind of the big activity or event for the committee. So if you're interested in participating in that committee, again, email me and we can talk more about that. And finally, our FLYN will be taking place March 26th through 28th in DC, and this is where you'll get to meet with representatives and talk about the issues that are happening at the time. If you, for some reason, are unable to join us March 26th through 28th, but you'd like to be involved in advocacy and attend a FLYN, I would strongly encourage you consider our friends at WMMA. Their FLYN will take place February 19th through 20th, so the month before ours. And if you email me, I can help you get in contact with them and explore that opportunity as well. They do a great FLYN as well. And now I'd like to turn it over to Rob Howell, our Public Policy Committee Chair, and he's going to talk about why it's important to participate in efforts.
Adria, thanks for having me as part of the webinar. I'd like to welcome everyone and just kind of talk about why get involved with public policy. One of the things here, we have the opportunity to connect with your local representatives and really to express your concerns and your needs to your legislators. So not only for the association, but also for your individual companies and also our industry. So it's important to get out there and let your voice be heard. The next item here was a unified voice, which strengthens our industry and your community, more likely to impact change. And as Adria mentioned earlier, with the FLYN, usually we're with the WMMA. Unfortunately, this year it's not going to happen, but they're going to go in before us, and hopefully we can recite some of the same things or some of the concerns in our industry that the WMMA will also bring up earlier in the year. So it's really important that we have a message that we're sending for the association and also our particular companies and industry. Learn about legislation that's impacting your company and industry. So a lot of times, we get a chance to have meetings before we go out and meet our legislators, and we learn about different topics and concerns within our industry, which is great because there might be things that come up that maybe you didn't think about. And one other thing I'd like to point out that Jason from LobbyIt does an outstanding job setting up those appointments. So it's usually a full day event, and you get a chance to really get in front of your local representatives and get a chance to meet with them. Sometimes it's actually with, not the legislator, but someone in the office there that will answer some of the questions that you might have or concerns and topics that you want to discuss. Participate in government processes and an opportunity to become an active citizen. Just trying to get out and be part of the industry and give back. That's the key, is to really have an opportunity to speak for the association and yourself and really be a U.S. citizen. And then also you get to meet a lot of great people. We have those meetings before and after we have the meetings with the representatives. that we talk about what we want to discuss or what's important for each individual company or possibly the organization or association. But not only that, we come back after the meetings and really sit down and talk about what we learned and have a better understanding. Of course, you're going to speak with Republican and Democrats alike, and there might be two different feelings on the same topic, but you get an understanding of where they sit, and hopefully we have some influence on, what's impacting our industry.
Thank you so much, Rob. Great points. So how to get involved in public policy. So again, this is kind of reiterating, but going a little deeper on what we've been talking about. So first off, just looking for updates, following our webpage, and receiving our email blasts, and checking in on those on upcoming opportunities that we might have. Visiting your local representatives and inviting them to your company. So this is something you can entirely do on your own. As an AWFS member, we are happy to help with that process. So if you're not sure how to reach out to your local representative or what that process looks like, for some people it does feel a little bit intimidating, and it certainly can be in the start, but it doesn't have to be, and we're here to help with that. So if you'd like to just touch base with your representatives and invite them to your shop, or how to host an open house event, a manufacturing day event, which is kind of a whole other thing, but I'm happy to talk to you about that and help you navigate that process and tie in your representatives. That we're here to help you with that. Again, if you'd like to join our public policy committee, please reach out to me and we can talk about that. If you are a member of our public policy committee, then we sponsor you to attend our DC FLYN, meaning that we cover your hotel and travel and everything. So that's a benefit of being involved and committing to our committee. However, you do not have to be a member of the committee to attend the FLYN. We welcome all AWFS member companies to attend the FLYN. The more, the merrier. We like having a strong group and voice, that we're all there at the same time with the same message is really important. So even if you don't necessarily want to be on the committee yet, but you have an interest in attending the FLYN, again, the dates are March 26th through 28th. Please RSVP by January 11th, and then we can continue the conversation from there. I will now turn it back over to Jason to talk about, we're going to talk more about the FLYN and why we do that and why it's important.
All right. Thanks, Adria. Yeah, so the FLYN is a very critical component of our advocacy on the Hill. So month in and month out, I go up there, I shoot emails, I have calls with staff. But at the end of the day, the person that can really get the most attention from the office and the member are their constituents, like yourselves. So when we schedule these FLYNs, the goal is kind of twofold. So we want to schedule a meeting with your specific member and senators. And ideally, we get a meeting with the member. That doesn't always happen. But during our scheduled FLYN, Congress will be in session unless their schedule changes, but they're currently going to be here in DC, not back home in their district. So we're going to push to try to get every person, at least one of their members, to be able to get a meeting with them. Or we'll meet with their staff, which is obviously very important as well. But meeting with the member can definitely be a little bit more of an exciting meeting because you never really know where the conversation will go. So we try to establish the fact that AWFS is a resource and an expert in the industry and that we can partner with these offices. So when we take you in there, whether it's with the member or whether it's with staff, we're going to talk about one to a few bills that will be our focus for the FLYN, and we'll talk about why those bills can help the industry and specifically what they can do for your businesses. And we'll work to encourage them to either to sign up and support the bill. And this is a good way to get additional support for bills that we are, advocating for, as well as it builds a stronger relationship with whichever office sponsored the bill. So when a member introduces a bill, and if we select that bill, we're going to go around during the fly-in and we're going to say, look, this bill is important. We want you to co-sponsor the bill. And as members jump onto that bill, the office that wrote the legislation is going to be very happy and is going to remember that AWFS is the one that helped them to gain support for it. So this not only serves to let offices and staff know that AWFS is an entity that exists and that represents a sector of the industry, but it helps them to kind of look to us to potentially partner with us in the future, and ultimately raises the profile of the industry, raises the profile of its specific members, and helps to highlight what is our central focus, which is the need for additional skilled workforce training and workforce development legislation.
Thank you so much, Jason. Okay, so that all sounds great, but how does a fly-in work? Or what does this mean? So Jason gave a great perspective on, what happens in the meetings and what we talk about. If you attend a fly-in, it's generally a 2-day visit to DC, depending on where you're coming from. It could be 3, for travel time. So AWFS and LobbyIt arrange your Hill visits, which are the appointments with the legislators, and we coordinate your agenda for the day. So again, this is why it's important that we know you're coming in advance, and we, especially Jason at LobbyIt, very carefully arranges who's going to be where at all times. So it's very structured, and you don't have to think about, any of that logistic piece. You just kind of go where your appointments are. So it's easy in that sense. We also provide all the information and materials about the topics that we're going to be discussing. So we'll give you what they call a leave behind, usually a 1-page flyer that kind of summarizes our topics and our requests or our message. And then we want you to be as educated and comfortable with what we're going to talk about as possible. So prior to the fly-in, we'll have multiple meetings over the phone, and I'll be sharing information about the topics, and you can get as in-depth as you probably want, and even more so about just getting familiarized with that topic and knowing what you're talking about, and what your position, as a company who's impacted by these topics, how you will present and verbalize this to the people that you're meeting with. So before we go to our Hill visits and have our day on the Hill, we will meet together as a group, usually the night before or that morning or both, and we go over the agenda, we review the topics one more time, answer any questions, we distribute the leave behinds and any other materials that we have, and we just kind of plan for the day and just go over our game plan. We generally break into smaller groups. For the 2018 fly-in, we had 10 people participating, and so we were generally in groups of 2 to 3. There was some shifting throughout the day to accommodate different appointments and stuff, but you're rarely in there by yourself, and that works out well because it just kind of leads to a more dynamic conversation with the legislator, things that might kind of come up. And especially if it's your first fly-in, it's not totally on you to have this conversation, which sometimes can feel intimidating. But when you're as a team, it's just a more friendly, casual feel. And then after our day, which, there's lots of walking for sure, and it's a tight schedule. So this is something where you want to wear comfortable but nice shoes and plan for walking, and it goes really fast. But then when everything's done, we'll reconvene for dinner, and we'll have a recap meeting, and everyone will get to share their experiences and any key takeaways or highlights from the day and what we need to follow up on immediately. And very promptly after our fly-in, we send thank you emails to the representatives or the the staff that we met with, and just reiterate our message and any requests or action items that we shared with them. So I will say, this fly-ins it's for a lot of people, they might feel intimidating, and I'm new to this. As my personal testimonial, I attended my first one just barely a year ago, and it's a very fun experience. I encourage you all to consider it if you haven't been to one before. It's not as overwhelming as it might feel, and it's just a great way to get involved and understand how the process works and how we fit into things. Everyone that we met with in our last fly-in was very positive and encouraging and wanted to hear from us. And just remember that they are there to represent us. So they want to hear from us and get our feedback so that they can represent us even better. So now I'd like to turn it back over to Rob. At our 2018 fly-in just this last February with WMMA, there was a really great outcome, and so he's going to talk a little bit about how that went.
So thank you, Adria. So this is just talking about the case study or some of the things that we discussed. I've been part of probably 4 or 5 different fly-ins as part of AWFS. Usually in the past, we'd try to set up meetings ourselves. It was really time consuming and sometimes difficult to get those meetings set up. So as I mentioned earlier, and I think Adria and Jason also mentioned that, Jason sets those meetings up and gets those things in place. Unfortunately, not always do we get to meet with the representative or the senator. Of course, we meet with their staff and sit down and do similar things as far as, talking about the topics that we're concerned about or have a meaning for us as an association and individual companies. Last year in February, during the meetings, Jason had set up a meeting with Representative Rob Woodall, who is our representative here in Georgia. And luckily enough, Rob Woodall had agreed to meet with us actually at our facility here during an event that took place in June. And the whole idea was to really get Representative Woodall to understand how technical and how advanced our industry really truly is. Unfortunately, with the economy being so good, it's hard to find skilled labor. And especially when you're talking about robotics and those kind of things and CNC equipment. So we had a great opportunity for him to come to our facility. The police officer showed up and combed the building. He had a chance to come into our showroom. We had companies show up, customers. We had employees and outside technical colleges. So it was a nice showing, a big group that came to our facility to get a better understanding of our concerns and our needs and the need for skilled workforce. And so it was a great opportunity to really get to know him. I'm hoping that in the next year when we set up meetings again, if he's in Washington, that it'll make it easier the second time to really go in and sit down with Rob and really him to, again, continue to understand our industry and our concerns and hear our voice. So this here was kind of a case study, the first time that we had anybody from Washington or here locally come to our building. And it was a great, great opportunity. And as Adria said earlier, I think it's a great way to give back. I mean, once I come from Washington with the group and the association, you feel good about yourself. You feel like you're contributing to not only for your company, but also the association and, again, the industry. So just a little bit about what took place this past year, and hopefully we can build on that. And hopefully, if you attend, you can also have an opportunity to have your local representatives come see your facilities and understand our business even more.
Thank you so much, Rob, and thank you especially to Rob and his team for making that happen. It was such a great follow-up after the fly-in, and the SCM team just put on a wonderful event. If you'd like to learn more about their event, there is a link to the article that SCM published, and there's lots of great photos of Representative Woodall at SCM. You can find it on our public policy webpage or on SCM's website. So check that out. But we were really happy that connection happened from the fly-in, and we were able to learn from Rob's experience and hopefully share that information with more member companies who would like to do the same. So having said that, that concludes our webinar. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat section or the questions on your control panel, and we can get those answered. Again, this webinar is recorded, so we will send out a link so that you can watch it on demand or share it with others, and we will also be sharing the PowerPoint presentation for your access as well. So I'm not seeing any questions at this time, so we can go ahead and wrap it up. I'd like to thank everyone so much for their time and for joining us today. I hope you found this to be an informative and helpful webinar. Again, please contact me with my email and phone number on the screen. Feel free to reach out, and we'd love to connect with you and get involved with your public policy efforts as well. Thank you so much, and have a wonderful day.